And now some fresh pickings from the political grapevine. The resignation of President Obama's green jobs czar, Van Jones, might have come as a shock if you do not watch cable news. In fact, the big three evening newscasts and two of the nation's most prominent newspapers barely covered the story. There was no mention of Jones by CBS, NBC, ABC, The Washington Post, or The New York Times on Wednesday, the night Jones first issued an apology for past statements. The same was true on Thursday, although a Washington Post blog picked up the story. That night, Jones again apologized for a slew of old remarks and the signing of that petition that alleged the Bush administration was behind the 9/11 attacks. ABC and NBC failed to cover the story on Friday. After that, although CBS finally did, there was no mention from the big three evening newscast or the Times print edition Saturday, but the New York Times blog finally addressed the story, as did the print edition of the Post. On Sunday, the morning after Jones' middle-of-the-night resignation, it was too late for the papers, but the three evening newscasts did file reports. The New York Times print edition finally ran its first mention of the story today on the lower half of the front page. Defense Secretary Robert Gates has condemned the Associated Press's decision to release a photograph of a U.S. Marine wounded in Afghanistan who later died from his injuries. The Marine's family asked twice that the photograph not be published. Gates pleaded with the AP's president, writing in a letter, quote, "Your lack of compassion and common sense is appalling." The leader of the largest veterans association also criticized the release, as did former Alaskan Governor Sarah Palin, who called it a despicable and heartless act by the AP. The Wire Service's director of photography defended the decision, calling it, quote, "a journalistic duty to show the reality of the war in Afghanistan, however unpleasant and brutal that sometimes is." And two newspapers in Bangladesh were left red-faced after publishing a fake news story as fact. Both papers ran an article from the satirical website The Onion stating that astronaut Neil Armstrong had finally admitted his 1969 moon landing was all part of an elaborate hoax orchestrated by the U.S. government. After both papers printed apologies, one associate editor told the French press agency, quote, "We thought it was true, so we printed it without checking. We didn't know The Onion was not a real news site."